Hello and welcome to this week's review on Dragon Ball Daima. This week I'm reviewing the episode titled Betrayal, and we kick off this review as we always do with these reviews by talking about the positives and the headline positives. All the things I enjoyed the most about this episode, which I'm going to talk about in detail in just a moment. So, headline positives. I enjoyed the brief smattering of humour that we had in this episode. I like Vegeta and the battle with Vegeta and Gomah was fantastically presented and well put together and just brilliant. And the plan to defeat Gomah is interesting, and we'll discuss that when we get on to it. Now, I will admit, dear listener, there isn't much humour in this episode. There are some lighter moments, but this isn't a laugh-right episode by any stretch of means of the imagination. But I did enjoy what little that we ended up getting. Now, I know that there's going to be some people out there that are going to be a little, maybe a little upset that Vegeta stepped away in the way that he did because of the threat that Bulma wasn't going to be taking any more baths with him. But hey, he's a man with priorities, so I can forgive that. And of all the ways for his little fight with Gomah to end, I think that's probably the better way to do it, because let's be honest, this is the penultimate episode, and when I saw him going up to go against Gomah, I knew, yeah, he isn't the one that's going to get the big win in the end, because we're still an episode after this after all. So how things were going to go, well, I suppose in the grand scheme of things it's better that we have him step aside for a gag moment more so than him getting beaten up by Gomah. I'm sorry, two characters with the same name that I both have thoughts about in this episode. But anyway, him stepping aside because he gets defeated by Gomah and then needs Goku to save his neck, well, that is certainly, I think, would have been a far worse way to go. But I liked the joke, and I just like the way it's presented. She just shouts out to him, and all of a sudden everything just goes monochromatic, and he goes, no, and he just almost immediately flies back. It's paced and put together like something you'd expect to see in the Dragon Ball Bridge series, because of just how it's put together. And I really did enjoy that, and there's a part of me that wishes there was a little bit more mirth throughout this episode, because it does feel a little bit dry. The action, of course, that we get is fantastic, and most of this episode is centered around that fight that Vegeta has with Gomah, because, you know, the whole betrayal angle doesn't really, well, manifest. I mean, we do get some mild history hints between Glorio and Aransu when they have that little interaction towards the start of the episode, but that ultimately doesn't really go anywhere in the end. I mean, I know that there was a lot of people, myself included, that was hoping that she would be the big villain in the end of it, or that she'd have at the very least more to do at this part in the story, but she really didn't, or that, you know, maybe there would have been a little bit more going on here. I don't want to get into the negatives prematurely, but even if Glorio had just met his end for the sake of drama, that would have been something, but no, nothing really happened vis-a-vis the whole betrayal thing. I mean, you know what, for the whole 30 seconds it looked like something was going to happen. It was great, just that whole moment where Glorio's walking past Aransu and everything just freezes for a moment, and she gives him that frosty cold look, and I thought, oh, something's going to happen here, something cool's going to happen here. She's going to tell Majin Du or Majin Ku to kill him or something, but no, nothing happens at all. And look, I will be honest, and I might as well be honest, because why not, this is my video. There is a part of me that is kind of glad that Aransu didn't kill him or do anything like that in the end. Because, you know, it would have just been you have betrayed me for the last time, buzz, before killing him off or doing something like that. And that's a bit cliched and a little bit trite. And where would they go really from there? I suppose they'd have to try and do something to get the third eye so that they can become the big bad, which would have needed some super powerful clutch move by her in the end, which, given the way things ultimately boil out, would have felt a tad tenuous for my like. So I am glad that they didn't do something too stereotypical, and in the end it didn't jump the shark. But even still, you know what, I'll get onto this when I get into the negatives in just a little while. Of course, the whole big wish that we got towards the end of last week's episode has been revealed now, and it is, as I speculated, and let's be honest, we all kind of knew was going to happen once we saw the wish being made, that this was going to be the wish that would turn Goku and his friends back into adults. So the question that we'd have thereafter, given that we always knew that was going to be the case, was what are the repercussions going to be for Glorio? And there wasn't any. So then the only question we were left with, okay, so how is this going to change the fight? Our heroes are now much more powerful than they were when they're in their mini forms, as they've been referenced to in marketing, but they aren't any healthier. I mean, injury-wise. They talk about how their stamina hasn't fully returned yet, even though they're older now. Even though that their clothes have been repaired and all the gashes and burns and cuts that they had on their body have all healed, they are just as knackered as they were when the fight ended. For the most part, at least, which feels a little bit odd to me, because I suppose, in the end of the day, this is how they justify that they're not all just going up to trounce Gomah, but, let's be honest, they kind of established that with the fact that the third eye made Gomah so near indestructible that Vegeta didn't really do much of muchness to him, or at least not until Gomah started to draw upon more power. And I will have to say that, and I'm not going to include this as a negative, because this is just the nature of the show and has been for a very long time, and regrettably the nature of much superhero fiction as well as much of anime. I really hate the fact that everyone is now just sitting back and giving Vegeta his moment to get his shit pushed in. Because I hate this when we get it in anime. It was such a refreshing moment over the past couple of weeks when everyone just throwing in, everyone's just doing their best to try and defeat Gomah, but now it's back to everyone just standing at the sidelines with their arms folded, giving commentary and cheerleading. I think that it is a royally dumb thing, and I dislike how it's done. I could understand not wanting to overrate the custom with this. I could understand not wanting to do too much of it, because it would end up devaluing that sequence of events we had in previous weeks, but at the same time, you ultimately ended up knowing where all this was going to end up going, given that Vegeta was the only one going to end up going out to fight there. And I will just say, though, despite my slight negatives as to why the fact that Vegeta's going out there to fight him alone in the first place, the fight that we did get with him and Gomah is just, well, it's frankly fantastic. I know I say that about just about every single fight sequence in this series, but it's true. And I'm not going to say, once again, that this is how the fight with Jiren should have looked, but that is true. But what I will say is that this helps to set a template as to what fights in Super should look like if and when it comes back, or whatever name it ends up going with, if and when it ends up coming back. Yes, you could say that with most fights in this series, but many of them are of a scale that works better with classic Dragon Ball and Z era fights, and to a certain degree GT, but I don't think we're ever going to get a storyline set in that particular series of events anytime soon. With here, however, unlike the fights that we see in Super, and regrettably most of Dragon Ball after the midpoint of Z, there is a flair and dynamism and a choreography that should be there for a super scale battle, with all that kind of spectacle being there, but being there with a weight, heft and physicality that makes the fight feel as though it is a real fight, that there is a level of grounding and a reality to it. Every single blow smacked in against Gomah feels as though it has a weight behind it, and really does feel that he's getting absolutely pounded into by Vegeta at literally which way will there and turn and stuff. And it isn't, as we see regrettably so frequently with Dragon Ball as a series, and regrettably much of the anime that I've seen, where it's people just kind of bouncing off one on each other and flicking about with laser beams flying over each other. Here there is a level of power that is backed up by a level of animation, which itself conveys a level of interaction and weight and power that actually makes it an impactful series of events. It makes it feel as though this is a genuine fight between two titanic characters, and I really do like that. Now, with all that said, we do get into the latter half of the episode, and, you know, that moment and the plan. Look, the plan to defeat Gomah itself is one that I like. It has a feel that I just calls back to early Z, when you'd have those frequent moments where our heroes aren't more powerful than the people they are fighting, so they have to think on their feet of ways around that. They have to find ways of exploiting their weaknesses, exploiting their ego, exploiting something about their physicality to try and get that win in. The whole idea that Goku and Piccolo are going to work together to try and take down Gomah itself feels like a call back to when they were fighting Raditz. A great way to just tie together the beginning and the end of what is effectively the era that many people know of. Many people saw this series starting with Z and the great battle between Goku, Piccolo and Raditz, and how that ultimately ended with things going the way that you know that they did. And that's what we're getting a reference to here. It's a book ending for many people as to how their adventure with Dragon Ball started, with Akira Toriyama being at the helm, and how it's now looking like it's going to end up ending. And beyond just that, I like the fact that there is a methodology here which extends beyond just, we're just going to punch this guy really, really hard until he explodes, or we're going to shoot him with the biggest laser beam that you ever did see, which regrettably seems to be the solution to most problems with this bloody series and just about every single villain that they end up fighting. With here, whilst it might seem a little bit silly, all things concerned, at least it's something very specific, something that itself holds as though there is a methodology to it. It makes it feel as though there is a action here, that there's a method to the madness other than just keep punching them until they fall over, and I do like that. And I kind of like the fact that Super Saiyan 4 is being used to enable this plan, rather than it being the thing that specifically wins the day for them. Oh, Goku has unlocked this new power, ergo, that means that he ends up going to end up winning using this thing. It changes the format and takes it back to something that feels a lot more typical in keeping with the fuller spirit of this entire series. I do like that, and understand that for some people, Super Saiyan 4 ultimately being used in this way is going to feel strange, and I do have other feelings about Super Saiyan 4 which I'll discuss shortly. Though of course, this all does beg the question as to how the hell Abura, the last Demon King to have the third eye in his possession, how he was able to get it off himself back in the day. Because when Arintu's going for her magic book, when she's going through the history book of what the method that was used, it kind of makes you think, okay, so how did Abura remove it from himself? Did he just clobber himself in the back of the head until it came off of him? Did he just go off to his bedroom and start belting himself in the back of the head with a frying pan so that it would take him off him? And he just did this in secret so no one would know his magical weakness with all of this? So was he just going up there in the middle of the night with a frying pan, and all these minions were thinking, that guy's into some strangest things, I mean, my god. Maybe that is the case, maybe it isn't, just something that sprang into the back of my mind there, so how he'd explain it all. Of course, this is the second return of Super Saiyan 4, which I do have mixed feelings of, so it's not something that goes quite into the negative just as yet. Look, I love how it is presented and how it's shown. I love the animation, the whole sequence of events that leads up to Goku getting into Super Saiyan 4. I like the very heavy-handed reference to the whole this is Super Saiyan 3 thing, but now it's this is Super Saiyan 4. And I do like the presentation of it. I like it from a flair point of view. I like it from a presentation point of view, an artistry point of view. I'm not so keen that as though I like it from maybe a narrative point of view. Because, he just knows Super Saiyan 4 now. I mean, we don't really know of a reason as yet as to why he can't use it in Super. I'm sure that there will be an explanation. I just find it odd that he's able to get into this in the hero now. He can just do it for now. Maybe there's going to be a thing of, oh, he defeats Gomah, but then he realises that the last of the magic used to make him like this is gone. But yeah, we'll see about that. It feels very odd for me to him to get immediately back into that just so quickly, and there's no real explanation as to how it happened in the first place beyond just Never's magic and how he's able to get back to it again. And it does feel especially conspicuous with the whole matter of the absence of the fusion bugs, because for a great section of this series it felt as though that's the thing that's ultimately going to be the method that our heroes are going to use to defeat whomever the bad guy is. And given that from brief period, at least for half of this episode, it looked like Super Saiyan 4 was off the table, it was going to be a case of, okay, the fusion bugs are going to be the big thing that's going to be used in the end, so we will go from there. And they're still missing. They're still absent. So, I don't know, maybe they're still going to end up getting used. Maybe Super Saiyan 4 isn't going to be enough, and in the end it requires Gogeta or Vegito or whatever name it's going to have in order to do all this. Or maybe a fusion between Majin Buu and Majin Buu or somebody else. I really don't know, but again, it just feels rather strange to me that that itself is being held to one side, and that Super Saiyan 4 is being brought back in so quickly. Oh sure, I love the way it's put together, I love the animation of it all, that whole sequence of events is great, but even still, it does feel weird how it's being brought back in so quickly, and almost without really much of a reason for it to happen, without much of an explanation. But I'm sure, I hope, we'll get that explanation next week. Now, into the negatives, and I will just say, and this is something I did hint to earlier on, look, for an episode titled Betrayal, there wasn't really much betraying going on. Okay, sure, this is in reference to what Glorio did towards the end of the previous episode, but it then just stops and doesn't really go anywhere thereafter when this episode starts. There's nothing to really develop it or take it forward. Like I say, there's a brief 30-second period where it looks like Aaron Sue's going to do something, or something's going to happen, but nothing really happens. And okay, from that moment on, I'm just watching this episode thinking, okay, where's the betrayal coming in? Because if this isn't the betrayal, then there must be something else. Something else is going to happen to warrant that name. Something else is going to come along to warrant that name to bring this forward. And ultimately nothing happens. Aaron Sue doesn't really do anything, but I suppose the betrayal is reference to her because now she's betraying her boss, even though she had already betrayed him and decided to betray him ages ago. The Majin brothers don't betray anyone, least of all Aaron Sue, with Do just being missing for a large section of the episode. And there was speculation that maybe the evil third eye would betray Gomah. You know, it would see him as being too weak to use the power, and then it would detach itself from him and form itself into the big bad for all of this, or absorb him, or take him over like some kind of parasite, or if not Gomah, then maybe it got knocked off him and lands on Glorio and he becomes the big bad, or maybe once all it's over and the third eye's bouncing about, never gets a hold of it and either he becomes the villain out of choice, or by manipulation by the third eye, or hell, maybe Vegeta does defeat Gomah, but then the third eye decides, ooh, this looks like a good host, and then jumps onto Vegeta, and then our heroes have to defeat him, and that itself would have been a call back to the whole Saiyan saga stuff. But in the end, there's no betrayal here to be seen. And yes, it is technically in the early half of this episode, and arguably when Aaron Sue is making her bid, making her moves, but it doesn't really go anywhere. Nothing really evolves from it, which feels like a bit of a disappointment to me. Like, I don't want to use the word filler here, but it really feels as though, as we get into this penultimate episode, that it just feels strange to me that the biggest moment here is just Goku using Super Saiyan 4 for a second time. Seemingly without much explanation, but I hope that we'll get that going forward. My second issue is the whole scene with Glorio's reunion with the rest of the group. It was something that would have felt like it had more weight to it had he been more of a character, had he more of a time to be a presence in this series, had we had a chance to better understand him more. And when it was happening, there was a part of me that was kind of expecting something bad to happen, that some wayward energy blast would see him off, or maybe Aaron Sue is going to do something, but no, nothing ended up happening. And the whole emotional impact of him coming back to his friends maybe would have had a greater weight and impact to it had there been a greater sense of ambiguity as to whether or not he was a villain in the end. Maybe he should have been the one to kidnap Dende a couple episodes ago, or maybe he should have turned to Aaron Sue earlier. Maybe it should have felt as though there is just this betrayal moment, not to play too much with the title, where it looks like, oh yes, he's actually a bad guy now. Heroes feel upset and distressed that their friend, or someone they thought they were their friend, in the end of the day decided, you know what, he's not going to work with them. Or failing all of that, he just needed to be more of a character throughout this series. Had Goku and his friends gone on the kind of adventures that we see in the outro, maybe that would have helped. Just a little episode now and again to just warming him up, giving him a chance to appear like a character, a chance for us to understand who he is and what motivates him, so that when that moment when he threw his lot in with Aaron Sue, reluctantly or not, it would make us feel downbeat provided we didn't see that one coming a mile off. But still, it feels like a very cheap way to add drama into something in a way that feels rather shallow. With that said, however, let's get into the overview, and I just have to say that whilst I do enjoy this episode quite a bit, for the penultimate episode of this season, and this entire series, let's be honest, it does feel a tad lackluster. There are individually fantastic moments. The whole action sequence of Vegeta fighting Gomah was fantastic. He's presented in a brilliant way. Seeing these characters fight to their truest potential is brilliant. The whole animation sequence we've got with Goku going into Super Saiyan 4 is great, but beyond this, there's not much of real great substance to make it better. Oh yeah, from a purely visceral fan point of view, it's great, but from a storytelling perspective, it just feels too much like, and I'd hate to say it, but connecting tissue between two major plot points. Next week, of course, is the final episode, so this is going to get wrapped up one way or another, so let's hope in the end, that the ending for all of this is just as fantastic as we want it to be. With that said, however, let's get into Comment Corner! It's time for Comment Corner, and we have a comment from Big X1 once again, who says, I hope this isn't the last we see of Super Saiyan 4. Well, surprise! It isn't! It's back again, and whilst we aren't going to see it in its true grown-up Goku potential, that will probably be coming well, it will be coming next week. Maybe there'll be other things, maybe there will be this fusion thing, maybe the one last twist, maybe there'll be something to set up for Super, or maybe set up for a plot line that can be picked up in Super at some other point. Maybe there's something that was set up for a spin-off, another Daima series at some point with Gohan doing something. I don't know, we'll soon see. We're into the next and final episode next week. And then after that, we'll be doing the season review, the series review, I suppose, at this point, because I don't think there's going to be a season 2 of this. But anyway, thank you all for listening, thank you all for watching, let me know what you thought about this particular episode down below. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit hoarse now, my throat's starting to hurt a little bit, I've gone, whatever, you get the idea. Thank you for watching, see you all next time, goodbye!
Thanks for watching, be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!